The sandstorm had finally settled, revealing the stark beauty of the Saharan excavation site. Professor James Harrison wiped the sweat from his brow, his weathered hands steady as he brushed away millennia of sand from what appeared to be a metallic surface. After 30 years of archaeological work, he'd never seen anything quite like this. The structure they'd uncovered wasn't made of stone or bronze, but of an unknown alloy that seemed to absorb and reflect light in impossible ways. Carbon dating had proved useless, the material's composition defied modern science. His team had spent weeks carefully excavating what they now believed to be an entrance, covered in symbols that matched no known ancient language. Professor Raj Patel, his youngest researcher, came running across the dunes. The ground-penetrating radar results are in. You need to see this. The excitement in his voice was palpable. The holographic display flickered to life in their makeshift command center, revealing a vast complex buried beneath the sand. The structure extended hundreds of meters below the surface, its geometric patterns too perfect to be natural. As they studied the scan, something caught Harrison's eye, a chamber at the very bottom, pulsing with an energy signature their equipment barely registered. That evening, as the sun set over the dunes, Harrison's team made their breakthrough. The entrance yielded to their efforts, revealing a corridor that seemed to defy physics. The walls thrummed with a faint blue light, responding to their presence. As they descended deeper into the complex, their instruments began malfunctioning, compasses spinning wildly. The central chamber was unlike anything human eyes had ever witnessed. Suspended in the center was a crystalline structure, roughly the size of a basketball, emanating waves of energy that made the air itself shimmer. Around it, holographic displays sprang to life, showing star charts of impossible detail and age. "This isn't just prehistory," Harrison muttered, his voice barely a whisper. "This is something else entirely." His hand reached out toward the crystal, drawn by an inexplicable urge to touch it. The moment his fingers made contact, the chamber erupted in light. Images flooded his mind, a war among the stars, civilizations rising and falling, and a terrible force that threatened to consume everything. The crystal was more than an artifact, it was a warning, a weapon, and perhaps humanity's only hope against what was coming. As the vision faded, Harrison found himself on his knees, gasping for air. The others rushed to his side, but his focus remained on the crystal, now pulsing with renewed intensity. In that moment, he understood the gravity of their discovery. This wasn't just an archaeological find, it was the key to humanity's survival. The team worked tirelessly through the night, documenting everything. Harrison knew they had to move quickly. Something about the activation of the crystal felt like a beacon, and deep in his gut, he knew they weren't the only ones who would have noticed its awakening. In the following days, as they attempted to decipher the holographic data, strange phenomena began occurring worldwide. Aurora-like lights appeared in impossible places, and astronomical instruments detected massive objects approaching from the outer solar system. The crystal's warning was coming true sooner than anyone could have anticipated. Harrison encrypted his findings and sent them to secure servers across the globe. If his understanding of the visions was correct, Earth needed to prepare for what was coming. The crystal wasn't just a relic of an ancient civilization, it was a tool left behind by those who had faced the same threat that now approached Earth. As the first reports of unusual objects in orbit began flooding news channels, Harrison looked at the crystal, now safely contained in a specially designed carrier. They had found it just in time, but would humanity be ready to face what was coming? The weight of this knowledge pressed heavy on his shoulders as he realized that the fate of our species might depend on understanding this ancient technology before it was too late. They came without warning. The first ships appeared as dark silhouettes against the moon, their massive forms blocking out entire star fields. Within hours, humanity's most advanced detection systems registered thousands more approaching from all directions. The alien armada had arrived. Commander Isabella Reyes stood in the United Earth Defense Force Command Center, watching as red dots multiplied across the tactical display. 20 years of military service hadn't prepared her for this moment. The room hummed with tense activity as operators relayed information from ground stations worldwide. "Multiple objects entering atmosphere," announced Lieutenant Kong, his fingers flying across the holographic interface. "They're bypassing all our orbital defense systems." The aliens called themselves the Nexus, though this information came only after they had demolished Earth's primary military installations. Their message was brief and clear: surrender or extinction. Their ships, organic metallic hybrid constructs, possessed technology that made Earth's most advanced weapons seem primitive in comparison. From his secure facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Harrison watched the invasion unfold with growing dread. The crystal hummed in response to the aliens' presence, its energy signature intensifying. His team had made progress in understanding its properties, but not fast enough. "The patterns match," Dr. Yamamoto said, pointing to the holographic data they'd extracted from the artifact. "The Nexus, they're the same species that the crystal's creators fought eons ago. They've been doing this for millions of years, harvesting civilizations, absorbing their technology." The first week of the invasion proved devastating. Major cities fell silent as the Nexus deployed their biomechanical ground forces. These weren't just machines, but synthetic organisms that adapted to every countermeasure humanity deployed. Conventional weapons barely scratched their armor, and nuclear deterrence proved useless against their shield technology. Reyes led what remained of her forces from a mobile command center, coordinating with other surviving military units worldwide. The crystal's existence remained classified, known only to a handful of individuals. Harrison's team worked frantically to unlock its secrets while humanity fought for survival. "We're losing ground everywhere," Reyes reported during an encrypted transmission to the remnants of Earth's leadership. "Their technology, it's like they're not even trying. They're just testing us, learning our capabilities." The Nexus's true power became apparent when they began transforming Earth's infrastructure. Their machines merged with human technology, creating hybrid systems that turned our own creations against us. Buildings morphed into alien architectures, and automated defense systems became extensions of the invading force. Harrison's team made a breakthrough in understanding the crystal's purpose. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a key to something far more powerful. The ancient civilization that created it had discovered a fundamental weakness in the Nexus's technology, but the price of using this knowledge had been the extinction of their own species. "The crystal responds to conscious input," Harrison explained to Reyes during a secure meeting. "It's not just alien technology, it's a bridge between organic and artificial intelligence. The ancients found a way to turn the Nexus's greatest strength into their ultimate weakness." As they spoke, the crystal pulsed with increasing intensity. Something about the Nexus's presence was affecting it, awakening dormant systems. Holographic displays filled the room with complex equations and diagrams, knowledge left behind by a civilization that had sacrificed everything to give future species a chance at survival. But time was running out. The Nexus had detected the crystal's energy signature and were converging on their location. Their massive ships cast shadows over the mountains, and their ground forces began advancing through the surrounding valleys. Harrison knew they needed more time to understand the crystal's secrets, but time was the one thing they didn't have. In the darkening sky, the alien ships began their final approach. The crystal's glow intensified, responding to the imminent threat. Humanity stood on the brink of extinction, but in the depths of their underground fortress, Harrison and his team raced against time to unlock the power that could turn the tide of war. The question wasn't just whether they could understand the ancient weapon, but whether they could do so before the Nexus found them. Deep in the bowels of an abandoned subway system beneath Chicago, the survivors gathered. The tunnels, reinforced with scavenged alien technology, had become one of humanity's last strongholds. Commander Reyes stood before a mix of soldiers and civilians, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of salvaged Nexus tech. Marcus Blackwood, a former quantum physicist, had been instrumental in understanding the hybrid technology. His hands were scarred from countless attempts to interface human systems with captured alien equipment. "The Nexus aren't invincible," he announced, activating a holographic display. Every piece of their tech we've studied shows the same underlying architecture, it's almost like they can't deviate from it. Harrison's research team had relocated here after the mountain facility fell. The crystal, now housed in a makeshift containment unit, responded to the jury-rigged alien tech surrounding it. Its pulses had become more rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. Their biomechanical systems operate on quantum entanglement principles, Blackwood explained. It's why their ships can coordinate so perfectly, why their ground forces adapt so quickly. But it's also their weakness, they're all connected, all part of the same network. The resistance had grown, incorporating survivors from around the world. They'd learned to use the Nexus's own technology against them, creating weapons that could penetrate their shields by mimicking their energy signatures. Small victories had given them hope, but the aliens still controlled most of the planet's surface. Reyes had established a network of underground bases, connected by ancient tunnel systems and powered by hybrid generators. Each base specialized in different aspects of the war effort, some focused on weapons development, others on understanding Nexus technology, and a select few worked directly with Harrison's team on the crystal. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Janet Wong, a teenage prodigy who had survived the initial invasion, noticed something about the crystal's energy patterns. "It's not random," she said, pointing to the data streams. "The pulses, they're trying to synchronize with the Nexus network, but in a way that creates destructive interference." Harrison and Blackwood worked tirelessly to verify Wong's theory. The ancient civilization had discovered that the Nexus's quantum network had a fundamental resonance frequency. The crystal was designed to generate a counter-frequency that could disrupt their entire system. But implementing this discovery proved challenging. The crystal's power requirements were enormous, and any attempt to amplify its signal would surely attract the Nexus's attention. They needed a way to broadcast the disruption signal globally while protecting the crystal from immediate retaliation. The Resistance began Operation Resonance. Teams were dispatched to strategic locations worldwide, setting up modified Nexus communication arrays. These would serve as amplifiers for the crystal's signal, creating a web of disruption points that could cover the entire planet. Underground factories, staffed by former engineers and scientists, worked around the clock to produce the modified transmitters. Every piece of salvaged alien tech was repurposed, every captured power source dedicated to the cause. The Resistance had become a well-oiled machine, driven by the hope of reclaiming their world. The Nexus weren't idle. Their ships patrolled with increasing frequency, and their ground forces probed deeper into the underground networks. They knew something was coming, but the quantum nature of their intelligence worked against them, they couldn't conceive of a threat to their fundamental technology. Harrison watched as the final preparations were made. The crystal's glow had intensified, its energy patterns aligning with the network of transmitters they'd established. In the command center, displays showed Resistance cells worldwide standing ready. They would only get one chance at this. The moment they activated the crystal's full power, every Nexus ship in the solar system would descend upon them. The time had come to test whether an ancient civilization's last hope could become humanity's salvation. As Harrison looked at the faces around him, soldiers, scientists, survivors, he saw not just determination, but understanding. They had learned and adapted, taken the best of human ingenuity and combined it with recovered alien technology. Whether they succeeded or failed, they had already proved that humanity would never go quietly into extinction. The crystal's secrets revealed themselves in the final hours before the operation. Wong discovered that its internal structure could be modified by human thought patterns, something the Nexus's purely logical systems couldn't replicate. This was why the ancient civilization had chosen humanity as their successors. Our capacity for intuitive thinking made us uniquely suited to wielding their technology. In the command center, Harrison and Blackwood worked to integrate Wong's discoveries into their plan. The teenagers' insights had transformed their understanding of the crystal's potential. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a bridge between human consciousness and quantum mechanics, capable of introducing chaos into the Nexus's perfectly ordered systems. Their entire network operates on predictable patterns, Wong explained, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. But human consciousness is inherently unpredictable. The crystal amplifies that unpredictability, turning it into a weapon against their quantum coherence. The Resistance's global network hummed with activity. Underground bases reported final preparations complete, transmission arrays aligned and powered. They had converted dozens of captured Nexus devices into amplifiers, each one carefully tuned to the crystal's frequency. Commander Reyes coordinated the defensive preparations. The moment they activated the crystal, every Nexus ship would detect the disruption. They needed to hold off the alien forces long enough for the resonance cascade to take effect. All teams, report status, Reyes commanded, her voice carrying across the global communication network. One by one, resistance cells around the world confirmed their readiness. They had positioned their forces around key transmission points, ready to defend them to the last. Harrison studied the crystal's pulsing light, remembering the visions it had shown him in the desert. The ancient civilization had faced this same moment, the decision to activate their weapon knowing it would draw the full fury of the Nexus. Their sacrifice had preserved this chance for humanity. Blackwood's instruments detected increasing activity in orbit. The Nexus ships were moving, responding to some signal only they could detect. "They know something's coming," he reported. "The quantum disturbances from our preparations, they can sense them." Wong worked feverishly at her station, making final adjustments to the crystal's containment system. "The resonance has to be perfect," she muttered. "Too weak, and it won't cascade through their network. Too strong, and it could tear apart our own technology." The first attacks came without warning. Nexus energy beams pierced the Earth's crust, targeting the underground bases they detected. The Resistance's salvaged shields held, but barely. The aliens were done testing humanity's capabilities, this was their full strength. Harrison felt the crystal responding to the attack, its energy patterns shifting in response to the collective fear and determination of the humans around it. This was what the ancients had discovered, emotion itself could be weaponized against the Nexus's logical perfection. "We've got multiple breaches in the outer tunnels," Reyes announced. "Ground forces are moving in." The sounds of battle echoed through the complex as Resistance fighters engaged the advancing Nexus troops. Wong's voice cut through the chaos. "The crystal's ready. The network's aligned, we need to do it now, before they overwhelm our defenses." Harrison placed his hands on the crystal's containment field, feeling its energy respond to his touch. Around the world, other Resistance members did the same with their transmission arrays. The ancient weapon hummed with power, drawing strength from the collective will of humanity. "Remember," Harrison's voice carried across the global network, "the crystal responds to emotion, to determination. Let it feel your resolve, your dedication to Earth's freedom. The Nexus don't understand these things, that's why they can't stop us." The crystal's glow intensified, feeding off the strength of human consciousness. In orbit, Nexus ships began to detect the building quantum disturbance. Their perfect network, the source of their power, was about to become their greatest vulnerability. The final battle for Earth had begun, with humanity wielding a weapon powered not by technology alone, but by the very essence of what made them human. The Resistance stood ready, knowing that the next few minutes would determine the fate of their species. The crystal erupted with blinding light as Harrison initiated the final sequence. The quantum disruption wave spread outward, amplified by transmission arrays across the globe. In orbit, the Nexus ships registered the attack too late to counter it. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the aliens. Their perfectly synchronized network began to fragment as human consciousness, amplified through the crystal, introduced chaos into their systems. Ships lost coherence with their fleet, their biomechanical systems unable to process the unpredictable patterns bombarding them. Commander Reyes watched from the command center as Nexus ground forces stumbled, their coordinated movements deteriorating into confusion. "All units, push forward. Take out their heavy weapons while they're vulnerable." Wong monitored the cascade effect, her fingers flying across control surfaces. The disruption is spreading faster than they can adapt. Their quantum entanglement is breaking down across all frequencies. In orbit, massive Nexus warships began to drift, their crews unable to maintain control as the quantum disruption severed their connection to the collective. Some ships collided, their navigation systems failing. Others attempted to retreat, only to find their faster-than-light drives unresponsive. Harrison felt the crystal's power surging through the network, carrying humanity's defiance to every corner of the planet. The Nexus had never encountered anything like this, their logical systems couldn't comprehend the chaos of human emotion and creativity being weaponized against them. Blackwood's instruments showed the collapse of Nexus control systems worldwide. Their ground forces are losing cohesion. The biomechanical links are failing, they can't coordinate their attacks anymore. The resistance struck back with everything they had. Teams of fighters, using modified Nexus weapons, engaged the confused alien forces. Without their network advantage, the invaders found themselves facing an enemy that could adapt and improvise faster than their damaged systems could respond. In the sky, the larger Nexus ships began to fall. Their quantum cores, destabilized by the crystal's attack, could no longer maintain the delicate balance needed for flight. They crashed into uninhabited areas, their impact sending shockwaves across continents. "We're receiving signals from resistance cells worldwide," Reyes announced. "The Nexus are retreating everywhere. Their remaining ships are attempting to break orbit." Wong's voice cut through the celebration. "The crystal's reaching critical power levels. The network, it's starting to affect our own systems." Harrison knew this moment would come. The ancient civilization had left warnings about the weapon's final phase. The quantum disruption wouldn't distinguish between technologies once it reached full strength. They had to shut it down or risk losing everything they'd built. "Begin shutdown sequence," Harrison ordered. "All stations, power down your transmitters. We have to disconnect before the cascade becomes self-sustaining." One by one, the transmission arrays went dark. The crystal's glow dimmed as Harrison initiated its containment protocols. Above, the few surviving Nexus ships fled into deep space, their once perfect network in shambles. The silence that followed was deafening. After months of constant warfare, the sudden absence of battle felt almost wrong. In the command center, humans embraced, cried, and laughed as the reality of their victory sank in. "Initial reports coming in," Blackwood announced, his voice thick with emotion. 80% of Nexus forces destroyed or retreated. Their ground units are completely disabled. The quantum disruption worked exactly as the ancients designed it. Reyes looked at the tactical display, now showing Earth largely clear of alien signatures. "They'll be back," she said quietly. "Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not for years, but they'll return." Harrison nodded, watching the crystal settle into a quiet dormancy. "And we'll be ready. We understand their technology now, and more importantly, we understand our own strength. Humanity didn't just survive, we proved why the ancients chose us as their successors." Around the world, people emerged from underground shelters to see their first sunrise in a free world. The war had changed Earth forever, leaving behind advanced technology and scars that would take generations to heal. But humanity had gained something more valuable than alien tech or military victory, they had discovered their own potential. The crystal would remain a reminder of both humanity's triumph and their responsibility. They were no longer just inhabitants of Earth, but guardians of an ancient legacy and defenders against threats they now knew existed in the darkness between stars. As dawn broke over the ruins of their cities, humanity began the work of rebuilding, stronger and more united than ever before. The Nexus had sought to conquer Earth but had instead awakened its true defenders. Whatever came next, humanity would face it together, armed with the knowledge that their greatest strength lay not in technology, but in the very things that made them human.